Good evening, everyone. Thank you for calling in. Before I forget, I would like to wish everyone a happy Labour's Day. Okay, especially for those that are working. Okay, for us, like non-stop, even tomorrow we have to work also. So now, today is 30th April 2025, the last month of April. Time really passed very fast. We already passed the first quarter of the year. So the time now is 8:30 p.m. Malaysian time. And the theme for this May 2025 forecast is month of great possession. Okay, it's supposed to be a good hexagram, but it has its flip side also. Okay, so for those who are new to our platform, actually what this talk is about is that we are applying both Chinese astrology, the stars movement prediction. Chinese astrology is about the star movement. Together with trend research, I do the Chinese astrology part, and then PC will do the global trend research part to focus on the global trends in economy, financial, geopolitical events, to help you to make a better decisions in investment. So the talk today, we have the introduction itself. Then I will go through the disclaimer, a brief recap of last month's forecast. Okay, we will recap what is our last month's forecast. Usually our forecast is about 80% accuracy. Okay, so influence of the 5 elements energy in May 2025, and then what May 25 will have in the geopolitical and financial forecast by BC, and then we will wrap up with a summary for tonight for the May forecast. Okay. So a disclaimer is that the content is purely based on our study in global trends in relation to the 5 elements in the Chinese astrology, and also research for you to use as a guideline in your investment decision. Okay, at least you have a direction. Then we will caution everyone to be exercise a lot of cautions in investment, especially in such volatile global trends, situation, and do your own research on the company you want to invest. We will not give any stock advice. Additional support will be through email address in the members Telegram group for 2025 astrology and global trends members. And then another thing is that we analyze different regional economies, such as US, Europe, China, and definitely all these economies' dynamics are differences. There will be inherent biases. Okay, so the observation is just purely based on our study, okay, and also on the current economic trends that we have also, that we have done our research, okay, and then these do not reflect any absolute or definitive judgments about any specific regions. So for those who are new in this, or this is our first time to call in, so let me introduce a little bit about us. I'm Evelyn. Actually, I have the interest in Chinese astrology. Okay, so I do the Chinese astrology part to focus on the global trends. But however, I am an engineer by training. I'm an engineering professional for the past 30 years in many multinational companies. Okay, so but I pursue this as my hobby in the past, and now I do this together with PC. PC is actually an investment group. He has written books on investment, like Invest in Foreign Share, one of his flagship bestsellers book. Okay, and also both of us also, we have already started this platform, I think, since year 2022, right? Yeah, since year 2022, and we have written 3 books. Every year end or every October, we will publish a book on the upcoming year's astrology and global trend forecasts. Okay, you can get, what this year will unfold, that so far our forecast has come to realization, okay, in what we have written as well. Okay, so for the past few years, we have already achieved, about accuracy of 80% to help our members in making profitable investment. Okay. Yeah. So let's recap on the month 2025 forecast, what forecasted and what actually happening. So I have forecasted is that in the month of April, we have is a dragon month, it's a it's a metal dragon month in the year of its snake. However, if you look at the Qingming solar terms parts, there is a clash, okay, a harm and a clash. So the earth is not stable itself. Okay, we see some traces of this, and then a harm that ongoing political power struggles, especially between East and West. Okay, yeah, and the tariff that is amounting, to escalated every day. Okay, and the changes. So, and also, I have done some Thai Sensu forecast as well. I'm on number 65. A Ganchaman means that I'm leader with no support. Then potential, actually, I forecasted potential of metal price upwards, which is also happening. Okay. There's some like, it escalated, then it goes down again. So, and then breakthrough in technology, creativity that produce wealth, and tensions exist, foundation sectors, investment will be rewarded, like those foundational, and then encourage, we always encourage confidence in the market, because there's one time the Hong Kong market has, fallen a lot. Okay, I think somewhere towards middle of the month. So it's just that become no this one. In fact, I also did not advise anyone to take any action. We did not advise anyone to take any action. Okay, so yeah, so let's look at of course the political side. You will know the struggles and the conflicts in many areas. So definitely, Trump has put in the tariff, and China definitely does not like it. Okay, and I already stated in the last 2 or 3, yeah, this year's astrology and global trends 2025 forecast. I forecasted Xi Jinping's 八字. So this year he has a heaven counter earth clash kind of things. So that's why he will be also more bold in certain sense. Okay. So, and also, and it causes after effects like the Boeing, they cancel cancel most of the order from China and all these things. So it's quite, it's quite dynamic lah. And also, in US politics is also dynamic. Okay. In terms of political power and struggles, that alone is already a very big country, and it will impact, most of the people, the population on earth, and what US policies. And I also stated that it's a month of unity, where Xi Jinping, he visited the nations in Southeast Asia. I think he picked Malaysia. He went to Vietnam first, and then Malaysia, and then followed by Cambodia. Okay, and also some of the alliances that has been going on, like UK, when the Brexit, now they are trying to go back to EU for another kind of a talk as well in Europe. Okay, so it seems that the alliances being made here and there, and metal price movement that have talked about, that there are copper, and then gold. I think it's one of the highest in the month. After that, it goes down, as just now PC has already pointed out. And also aluminum price also goes up. Okay, we have already actually more or less predicted that in our book, and we have also predicted that resources will be shortage this year. Okay, so indeed that it shows that some of the influencer or some of the KOL has already look at that as well. Okay, and they also predicted that there will be, supply chain shortages coming in. Okay, especially this is important if you are in manufacturing, it will impact you a lot. Okay, so
Yeah, Evelyn, if
yes,
I might share, in fact, in our book and as late as, I mean, as early as last year, we have already predicted shortages in the supply chain. Because I because of the changing dynamics of geopolitical concerns. Yeah, back to you, Evelyn.
yeah, okay. So from the element points, I predicted this because this year there's no metal. Okay, yeah. So when no matter the day masses cold water, then there will be shortages. So it also aligns with the global trends research as well by BC. And this is a post that I put up in the Facebook for the fun of it. I put up a trade war, because I stated we predicted that the East and West trade war will be escalated, as foreseen in our last month's forecast. So right now we have it escalated in a way, and okay, so those in Malaysia will catch this joke, shocks sendiri. How to translate shocks sendiri, busy.
Kaki kong, kaki song.
You say on your own, then you feel good on your own. In other words, okay, shocks sendiri lah. Okay, so this is in my Facebook post. I just do it for the fun of it, because suddenly the inspiration comes on that day. So I just put it in. This one's really short and dirty on April 28th. It says that there are a lot of deals going on with China. And yet, nobody in China knows about this. Okay. So in month of May, let's look at the 2025 energy. Okay, it's already it's a summer, arrival of summer or Lixia. Okay, so the month branch metal is being countered by fire. So that is a countering of the this one of this is a fire, right? Because it's a snake month. May is a snake month, and then counters the metal. Okay, and then Sing and Yig also is a conflict. That means ongoing metal and wood conflict, because metal represent the west, wood represent the east. Okay, and then there's a destruction relationship exists also in the charts. So in the Lycia chart, so there will be potentially a major reset when there is a destruction, and then there will be changes in precious metal that could trend down. And the weather also, because the Lycian weather is like no water, so expected hot and dry, potentially wildfire. But however, when there's no water, it also, the water also will accumulate somewhere else. Then there will be, intensity of heat and then tropical storm as well. Okay. Let's look at yeah. Okay, good. So for the month of April, let's look at the hexagram. Actually, this is a good hexagram.
It is month of May, is it?
Yeah, sorry, it's month of May. I need
Yeah.
to change this one. Hold on for a while. Okay, let me just put back into the full screen. Yeah, for the month of May is 4天大勇 means that great possession. Okay, so it's actually a good hexagram in a way. If you see this in the forecast, means that congratulations, you are going to have abundance of things. That means good things. Then this is fire. This is a 离卦. This is a 乾卦. Means that fire over the heaven. Okay, and potentially there will be, looks like a market rally from the hexagram itself, but and that gives will cause overconfidence and denominating, which is not good. Then and also there will be a risk of increase of wealth inequality, which we already see, because the inflation, stagflation, all these are coming in. Okay, every day we see that the prices are going up. Okay, and then social unrest also rising. All this will bring to social unrest, rising nationalism, and political instability, and then trade wars and sanctions still ongoing, and then maybe technological and military races. Okay, so this is what the month of May that is going to bring us. Okay, and okay, yeah. For this time, actually, I think I already put in my social media, Telegram channels that this year I have a 4 days online. I do a 5 days online course last year on astrology and personal finance. Okay, this year I decided to change the theme a little bit to look at the abundance in golden years, because I think prices, things are going up, inflation, it's going to affect a lot of people, especially in retirement bracket. Okay, so in this online course, you will learn about decoding your birth chart from wealth, discover your money style, how to avoid wealth leakages, and then create your roadmap to abundance according to your birth chart. Because the the fire Li Gua has already changed a lot of things, and it changed a lot of things that the way that we look at once we leave the corporate world, that really we're retiring in our grandmothers or in our parents' time. I don't think that is the thing anymore. Okay, yeah, to look at retirement. I'm also in the retirement age already, so right now I'm still very active. Okay. So, and the course outline is the module will be, each day there will be 2 modules: money mastery in new eras, decoding your birth charts, passion to profit, and wealth generating activities in your golden years. But I will change the module a little bit, the orders. It's 4 days course. One Zoom link, you have to register 4 times. You register one time means for day one only. Okay, you have to register another 3 times if you want to attend the course. So the financial planning for retirees, this one is a topic by Casey. He has already proposed a newer topic, which is much more exciting. Okay, and also unlock your wealth capacity. This one actually I need to change the speaker. Is PC Wong, and there will be a bonus module by Dr. Yao as well on mentality and the mental part of this one. Then beware of scams and protecting what you build and manifesting abundance and prosperity. So the main speaker will be me, the main instructor, Casey. He will look into the personal financial side for golden age. And then PC, he will talk about the module on related to investment. And Dr. Yao, actually Dr. Yao is a senior consultant neurologist. In fact, she's the head of Department of Neurology in Penang General Hospital, and I've invited her to come in and talk about the mental state and abundance in the golden years. That is her passion. She has championed a lot of things on healing powers within us, and also the breakthrough, the mental, because mental illness is going to be it's going to be quite a big this one in period 9. So there will be a lot of people, a lot of depression cases that will happen. Okay, so this is the panel instructors for this course itself over the 4 days, starting from 8th of May and then 10, 11, and 12 of May. Okay, so if you cannot attend, it's okay. We have recording that you can buy at a nominal price. Okay. So over to you, BC, on your part. I will drop down the link for registration for those that are interested to attend this. Okay, so maybe you want to share your screen, BC? Yeah, okay. Are you okay? Can share?
Yeah, I already sharing.
Okay, good, good. Okay, let me stop sharing my side. Yeah.
Okay, so actually for the month of April, we hit quite a lot of the forecasts here correctly, except that in Europe, we want that the yield for Germany, France, and UK 10-year bonds could escalate given the deteriorating economic conditions. But the ECB came in to rescue the bond market by cutting interest rate on 17 April. So on top of that, BOE means the Bank of England, yeah, is widely expected to cut interest rates in May. So the ECB action and BOE's anticipation of in May to cut interest rate caused the 10-year government yields to fall. So what we got correct. In the US, we mentioned that the market will be choppy with a downside bias, and Trump could step in to reverse the downtrend, which he did. The S&P fell to a low of 4,983 points, or down 11.2% month to date, and 11.9% off its peak on 8th of April before Trump reversed course and urged investors to buy just before he announced a 10% tariff on all countries except China on 9 April, sparking a huge rally. So this we already predicted in the month of March when we did our April forecast. So as expected, inflation remained lofty at above 2% at 2.4%. We also predicted increase in layoffs in April. Unemployment claims for the week ending 19 April stood at 220,000 jobs versus 202.6 thousand a year ago and up 6,000 job cuts versus a week ago. So Trump suggested that income tax will be eliminated for those earning less than 200K on 27 April, which we mentioned would be a tactic used to offset the tariff based on his campaign promise. So this has been widely talked about. This is not something that we predicted, okay, but it did happen in the month of April. So this actually underscores why Trump wants to wants to eliminate the income tax for those earning less than $200,000 a year, because it also shows the desperation. Okay, because despite what the Trump administration has been telling the public that other countries are paying for the tariffs, it is actually US citizens who are paying the tariffs. And the irony is that a lot of his supporters believe that other countries are paying the tariff. And he even tell that the tariff revenue is so great that it's time we can cut we can eliminate the income tax for those earning less than $200,000 a year. But that is not true, which I will explain further on in this session. So in Europe, where we got right, we have cautioned many times that Germany's economy is in dire straits. Germany's economy has contracted for 6 consecutive quarters. Here, negative growth for 6 quarters, the country's longest recession in post-unification Germany. This was what credit given to bar chart to highlight this important event. And the ZEW indicator of economic sentiment for Germany sank to -14 in April 2025, the lowest since July 2023. But again, as I mentioned earlier, when we were before we went proper on the webinar, we were talking a lot of small talks. it's very difficult to predict the trend of the stock market if we simply base on our knowledge of economy and also fundamentals of economy. Because by right, if let's say there is negative growth, the stock market shouldn't be trending any higher. But what we have is that the German DAX index have been moving up very strongly despite all the negative economic news. And this shows that there is, investors that are betting on the ECB to cut interest rates to support the economy, and therefore bad news become good news. So the longer the bad news, the more positive they are of the market because of an eventual rate cut. So it is the same with the US. But all this actually just caused the financial bubble to become even bigger. And when the tire meets the road, okay, we can see a lot of distorted speculation coming down spectacularly. So this is something that have hardly happened over the last few decades. But in these few years, we have seen that the more negative the news, the better the stock market is. So this is something that is rather unbelievable. So we also forecasted an increase in public debt for Germany, France, and UK, and this is how they fared at the end of Q1 2025. Germany's debt reached 2.69 trillion, an increase of 57 billion from 2024. France government debt is projected to reach 3.6 trillion US dollars, an increase of 158 billion US dollars from 2024. France has still not released its data, but this is just a projection. UK's government debt projected to reach 2.81 trillion, an increase of 120 billion from 2024. Meanwhile, projections indicate that the government debt in the euro area is expected to increase in Q2 2025, reaching 88.3% of GDP by the end of the year. So the moment that the ECB cuts interest rate, that means that there is a lot of stress in the economy. But if the government yield did not fall deeper enough, and in view that there could be a huge stagflation in the US, we can see another turmoil in the global market. So we also got it right that Europe will see lower inflation due to the appreciation of the euro and Great Britain pound against the US dollar. And in China, we forecasted more stimulus by the government. So these are what the government have announced. April 1st, government unveiled a plan to strengthen financial services for technology-based enterprises as part of the country's effort to promote integrated advancement in technology and industrial innovation. 24th April, government intends to implement a series of targeted measures to foster a favorable environment for private enterprises and promote growth in the private sector. 28th April, government outlined plans to support jobs and help exporters while hinting at the possibility of more stimulus in light of the rising trade tensions with the US. And we predicted that the Chinese retail sales will be very resilient, and it grew 5.9% year on year in March. So China trade continued to show resilience as trade in services and goods rose 6% in March. So we said that China will court the European Union, okay? amid the Trump tariffs. So what we have here is that there were discussions like China set to lift sanctions on MEPs in Euro-Trump offensive, EU-Trump offensive. China seeks to strengthen EU-ASEAN ties as US trade war escalates. Targeted tariffs and negotiation efforts are currently in progress. China and EU explore replacing EV tariffs with minimum prices. And then we mentioned that China will continue to make technology breakthroughs. Now, these are some of the very important technology breakthroughs that happened over the last month. China fatigue-free alloy breakthrough paves way for aerospace revolution. Okay, world first 1 nanometer ISC chip made in China with 2D materials. So China has the world first operational thorium nuclear reactor. China tests non-nuclear hydrogen bomb, science paper shows. China quietly making progress on new techniques to cut reliance on advanced ASML lithography machines, and Huawei to roll out AI chips in the second half as potential alternative to NVIDIA H20. For those who are still thinking that NVIDIA is going to expand its business, all indications are showing that NVIDIA has actually lost the Chinese market because
No wonder he goes to Beijing, Jensen.
yeah, but there's nothing he can do because China right now is going to produce a lot of chips that will actually doesn't require inputs from the US. So, and if you all have been following news about the kind of revolution coming out in the AI sector, the advent of DeepSeek has made a lot of people realize that you don't need huge clusters of GPUs, to support the AI expansion. So certain computer of certain programming power, can also get involved in the development of AI. So that's why Microsoft actually canceled a lot of data centers as well. So gradually, I think that NVIDIA might have reached a peak, So its business could be pretty challenging because it has totally lost the Chinese market. And also there's a lot of cancellations of data centers. And some of its business that it has highlighted in its reports actually have a lot of so-called conditions. For example, it is like they base it on the purchase received, but not revenue received. And these purchase orders that have been released can actually be cancelled. So that is why there's a lot of so-called conditions that NVIDIA put in all the small tags that this is subject to this and this is subject to that. So a lot of it is actually things that which it hasn't even received the revenue yet, but revenue based on like purchase orders that are being received, not actual money that is received. So you need to be a bit more careful, because certainly the behavior of the share price is showing that the market is wisening up. And most of the Magnificent Seven, you can see that they are actually have come down in double digits. So let's look at the US economic indicators. CPI fell 0.2% month on month in March. Year on year, it grew 2.4%, down from 2.8% in February. So this is predominantly driven by the lower oil price. Okay. And because of that, Trump is very frustrated because even though the CPI has been trending down, the Fed has refused to cut interest rate. And that is why he has threatened to fire Powell only a few days later to say that he has no intention to fire Powell. So that is the kind of flip-flopping in the Trump administration that actually frustrate a lot of investors and also economies. So core CPI rose 0.1% month on month in March. Year on year, it rose 2.8%, down from 3.1% in February. The PPI fell 0.4% month on month in March. Year on year, it gained 2.7%, down from 3.3% in February. Retail sales rose 1.4% month on month in March. Year on year, it gained 4.6%, up from 3.4% in February. Net retail sales less CPI was 2.2%. Now, the rise could be driven by pre-tariff buying. Now, another disturbing sign that is growing in the US is that there is a widening pool of consumers who are buying now but paying later. Okay. If for Malaysians who actually watch their parents did their grocery during the 1970s, they have this famous 555 small notebook.
Yeah, 555.
Okay. So yes, the 555 notebook where they buy grocery is all entered into that notebook, and at the month end they pay.
Yeah,
okay.
it's based on trust.
Yes. So, but right now in the US, what we now pay immediately. Right now in the US, they are actually having this pool of people that buy now and pay later, and at the same time, US consumer credit card debt has been reaching a new record high. Student loans also record high. Household debt also record high. And not only that, delinquency in credit card has been rising as well. And the delinquency in single family homes have reached a new record high that is higher than the period when it triggered the global financial crisis. So you can see that why a lot of economists say that the US economy is driven by debt is because it's financialized. Okay, everything relies on debt to push the price of things higher. Okay, to push the consumption higher. So that is why people say it's driven by debt. Now, industrial production fell 0.3% month on month in March. Year on year, it rose 1.3%, down from 1.4% in February. So NAHB index came in at 40 in April, up from 39 in February. Now, the NAHB is actually the National Association of Home Builders. So 40 means that the Home Builders Association believe that the housing market is still in contraction because anything below 50 is a contraction. So housing starts plunged 11.4% month on month in March, while housing permits rose 1.6%. New home sales rose 7.4% month on month in March, driven by builders' purge of inventories. So when builders, in the US, they call them builders, but in Malaysia or Southeast Asia, we often refer them as developers. Okay. So when you hold a lot of inventories, then your cost is sunk into the inventories, and that will affect your cash flow. So what builders did, they offer a lot of incentive to purge the inventories. And year on year, it rose 6%. Now, existing home sales means reselling of homes, yeah, not new homes, fell 5.9% month on month in March. Year on year, it fell 2.4%. So that is because existing home sales were competing with new home sales. But another trend is now surfacing, which is also quite disturbing regarding existing home sales, which I will explain later on. Now, the preliminary PMI for manufacturing in April rose 50.7 from 50.2, while preliminary PMI for services disappointed, dropping from 54.4 to 51.4. So the US PMI and for services and manufacturing are still in expansion. Anything below 50 is a contraction. The conference board leading economic indicator leading economic index declined 0.7% in March after a decline of 0.2%, which was revised up from negative 0.3% in February. The LEI also fell by 1.2% in the 6-month period ending March 2025, a smaller rate of decline than its 2.3% contraction over the previous 6 months. So here it shows that the leading economic indicator is still in negative territory, okay, which is below zero here, but it seems to be trending up. And that is why some economists believe that the US is not facing the threat of a recession because it is not trending down, it is moving up. But sometimes when you look into a lot of economic indicators, there are some conflicting trends. But in this webinar, we try to dissect some of the more important ones to give a truer picture of where the direction of the US economy is heading. Now, let's talk a bit about Trump tariffs. Trump admin is getting desperate for a deal with China, and in his interviews, Trump kept saying that he has held talks with Xi and that talks are going on at the lower levels. Neither is true, and here is the rebuke from China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So China has insisted that there will be no talks.
The Pinocchio.
Yeah, until the US removes all tariffs. Okay, so a lot of economists are believing that China is aggressively working towards decoupling entirely from the US. And by refusing to talk, China is actually is actually letting the world know its stance against the US. Now, the other thing is that there could be strong indication of a consumer goods shock. Now, based on the shortfall in freight volume to the US, late June or July could be brutal for the US consumers and the US economy overall. Here you can see this was something that Spencer Hakimian brought up in his Twitter account. Okay, you can see how container bookings from China have fallen sharply. Okay, many large retailers have stocked up prior to the tariffs on Liberation Day. In the coming weeks, many shelves will be empty. Evelyn, you would like to add something?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, this is from the perspective of consumer in US. Actually, now is US summer holiday, so the impact will not be felt so much. Okay, and when in the autumn months, end of July, August, maybe end of August, the school reopen, the kids wants to go back to school, so it will also have a lot of impacts on the parents, in US, where they don't have access to affordable things items, school items, step back to school items.
Yeah. So this is something which has been highlighted as well, um, um, quite quite widely, because the back to school, a lot of the cheap stationery will no longer be available, just as parents are actually squeezed, okay, by a lot of economic challenges that affect their overall disposable income. Now, this will cause inflation to skyrocket as demand exceeds supply. Meanwhile, the freight volume from China to US has collapsed, okay, as shown in this chart. Now, let's talk a bit about the impact. Because when the containers do not move to the US, it will affect a lot of jobs. First and foremost will be many stiff door. Stiff door are those what you call port handlers, okay? Truckers and warehousing jobs will be lost. This will also impact retailers and restaurateurs, which form the bulk of the US consumption economy. Service staff will be laid off as business earnings collapse. The risk of a recession sometime in Q2 or Q3 is very real. And this is what Jamie Dimon said. Okay. Jamie Dimon told investors last week that the best outcome is now a recession for the US. Okay, that's his best outcome. But we are predicting something more damaging, which is a stagflation. And we will explain our case in the coming slides. So Fred Alley predicted that the US could face supply chain shortages in late June or early July. Because of the dependency of manufacturers to secure raw materials or components from China, supply chain shortages can bring manufacturing to a halt, resulting in more layoffs. And not only that, like in the month of March, we predicted that China would cut off supply of key minerals to the US, okay? And true enough, in April, China actually halted the export of critical minerals, and not only critical minerals, the raw materials, but also their finished product to the US. And that also applies to secondary export. And recently, China issued a warning to South Korea that if South Korea export China's finished products made from critical materials, okay, to the US, then they would take action against the South Korean company. So if all of this happens, okay, manufacturer cannot secure the materials, job layoffs and all those, the GDP will be crushed. Meanwhile, inflation will skyrocket as demand for goods outstrips supply. This is the perfect storm for massive stagflation to be unleashed on the US economy. The fundamentals behind a stagflation are three key points. Number one, low growth. Okay, here we're talking that the best scenario will be a recession. Okay. The other thing is inflation, which will definitely be the case because of the tariffs. It pushed the price of goods much higher and it causes inflation. But there are also certain parties that say that tariffs will actually cause deflation because they are so expensive, no one wants to buy them. But China not only make things that can be subject to deliberation, okay, or subject to people having to forego it. There are a lot of critical goods that China export to the US. Okay, for example, just now we talk about components, okay, components and to the manufacturing industry, raw materials to the manufacturing industry, and a lot of domestic necessity for household use. So that is why the argument for deflation may be somewhat contravene, okay, to the kind of consumer needs. So that the other thing is that all this would eventually lead to a lot of unemployment. So all these three criteria have been will be met eventually, and therefore it will unleash a stagflation. Now, the reason why it can be a massive stagflation is that during the 1970s to 1980s stagflation, the US did not have so much debt, okay? And it didn't pay a very high interest on its debt. But all of these have changed. Okay, back then the US still retained its manufacturing prowess. But right now, US is no longer a manufacturing country. Manufacturing only accounts for a small percentage of its total economy pie. And because of that, the stagflation that will be unleashed this time round will be much massive than previous. So the Fed may find itself wedged between the need to cool the inflation and to stimulate the economy. Now, in a worst case scenario, the Fed, no matter where they stand, they will actually go for stimulating the economy. And when that happens, because of the high inflation, if they want to stimulate the economy, the Fed need to have a lot more, issue a lot more bonds. But because of the high inflation, no investors would want to touch not all investors, but those smart investors would not want to touch US government bonds. So what happens is that the Fed will eventually have to have massive QE, okay, in order to stimulate the economy. And that QE will be much more greater than what the Fed did from QE 1 to 3 during the global financial crisis. And that would actually push the US dollar into unknown territories, okay? And when that happens, okay, inflation would actually skyrocket, maybe towards towards a trend where people will start to say, it's hyperinflation instead of just inflation. And if that happens, then hard assets will be the best hedge against such a scenario. So Trump's strategy to eliminate income tax to offset the tariffs. And Trump proposed eliminating income tax for those earning less than $200,000 per year to offset the tariffs. The proposal does not tackle the potential shortage in the supply chains. Neither does it address the potential shortfall in government's revenue. So here's the grim picture. The US Treasury needs to borrow $514 billion in Q2, an increase of 320% from its previous estimate. This figure is expected to rise further as more government bonds become due in the coming months. Some analysts predicted that by end of this year, US would need to refinance between $8.5 trillion to $9 trillion of bonds, which are actually maturing this year. So what could happen? Trump's proposal to eliminate income is passed, then there will be a rally. Okay, this is assuming that it happened. Then of course there's a rally because the market reacts to positive news. Whenever there is free money, okay, the market will rally. So investors will anticipate greater issuance of US treasuries to offset the drop in government's revenue. Because an analyst said that even if the tariffs were substantial, if Trump really eliminates the huge portion of those earning less than 200,000 per year, that tariff revenue need to be in a few multiples. Okay, that means that there won't be enough money from the tariff, okay, to offset the income tax. So that means that in order to keep on spending, the US government would actually have to issue more treasuries. So these investors, okay, would sell US treasuries or avoid bidding in the auction, pushing the yields and US dollar higher. And this could push gold and silver lower in knee-jerk reaction, because anytime that the US dollar moves up, the bullion banks will come in and smash the price of gold and silver. But inflation remains high, therefore the Fed will turn hawkish, creating another pressure point for gold and silver to trend lower. But nevertheless, I believe that we will see buying support is expected from other countries. Now, especially in the May Golden Week, the bullion banks will come in and smash the price of gold and silver, because the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which trades in futures and physical gold, they will be closed for a few days. Now, even though the Shanghai gold futures are traded, it has to be matched by physical delivery. But the COMEX, which runs the gold futures in the US, does not need to comply, okay, with physical delivery, because they can issue another derivative called the EFP, which is another derivative to stipulate that with the EFP, the buyer can actually claim physical gold from the LBMA. But that EFP itself can be bargained, okay, can be redeemed by cash as well. So the COMEX is essentially not a physical gold market, whereas the Shanghai Gold Exchange is a physical gold market. And when the physical gold market is absent, okay, from the global market, rest assured the bullion banks will come in and smash the price, because they need to get out of their short position. Now, for those members who received the weekly report, I actually share how much net short position exposure the bullion banks are in. And based on the latest report, if I remember correctly, is almost 60 billion loss in net short position for gold, and I think a few $1 billion loss in net short position in silver. So the bullion banks would want to cover their shorts aggressively in May and June, because according to another analyst, Andrew McGuire, he said that by July 1st, the bullion banks need to be Basel III compliant, which means they will be checked against the naked shorting of gold and silver, not silver, sorry, just for gold only, okay? And they need to be Basel III compliant, which means they cannot do that kind of massive selling without physical backing. And that is why there is desperation among the bullion banks to want to reduce their net short exposure. So in the month of May and June, we can see, okay, a lot of volatility, and along the way, buying opportunity as well. Because if you buy gold, you are hedging against the devaluation of currencies. For example, ever since, if we want to trace back to the formation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, Since then, the US dollar has devalued close to 99% against gold in terms of value. So that is why owning gold is to protect your purchasing power. Okay, it is more a protection than an asset for speculation. So here, what could happen in May? Inflation will likely remain above 2% because the tariffs will start to bite. Early signs of shortage in the supply chains and news of consumer goods shortage will hit the headlines. Now, this will lead to an increase in smuggling and hoarding. As deflation exerts itself, we will see slower growth, an increase in unemployment, bankruptcies, and loss of consumer and business confidence. Already, bankruptcies are trending higher than 2024. So this is what we are having. And this was during the COVID period. This is during the global financial crisis. So if, let's say, it deteriorates further, then don't be surprised if it can overshoot the COVID period. So US public debt will likely touch 37 trillion by the end of May because of the huge amount of debt that the US need to refinance. So Trump proposed tax cut will come at a price. Therefore, any sequential rally will unlikely be long-lasting due to the threat of a stagflation where stock market often perform below expectations. During the stagflation period from January 1971 to December 1981, the S&P fell from 770 to 417, the equivalent of a 353 points decline or 45.8% decline. May be prudent to take profit in the ensuing rally. On top of that, we have an ongoing commercial real estate crisis and looming housing crisis as US consumers saw increase in delinquencies in credit card debt and single-family homes. I've expressed earlier that single-family homes delinquencies have now reached a level much higher than that during the global financial crisis. But this is another indicator. Single family home for sale just risen to 500,000. Now, why do families want to sell their home? Because they are cash strapped. Okay, they need to have a lot of debt they need to pay. Okay, and therefore they are selling their homes. Okay, and this has reached a level that is comparable during the peak of the global financial crisis. So we could have a housing crisis in the midst of a stagflation. So if we look at Euro area CPI came in at 2.2% year-on-year in March, down from 2.3% in February. UK CPI came in at 2.6% in March, down from 2.8% in February. Euro area retail sales came in at 2.3% year-on-year. Oh, sorry, this one. The Euro area economic data is often delayed by 1 month. Okay, so this is correct. So Euro area retail sales came in at 2.3% year-on-year in February, up from 1.8% in January. UK retail sales came in at 2.6% year-on-year in March, up from 1.8% in February. Now, German manufacturing PMI came in at 48 in April versus 48.3 in March, while services PMI came in at 48.8 versus 50.9 a month ago. Germany's economy is still trending down. Its industrial production, which has been one of the biggest contributors to Germany's economic growth, has been mired in negative territory since June 2023. So we are approaching a 2-year period where the German industrial production has been in negative territory. And that is why Germany is in dire straits. Now, France manufacturing PMI came in at 48.2 in April versus 48.5 in March, while services PMI came in at 46.8 versus 47.9 a month ago. UK manufacturing PMI came in at 44 in April versus 44.9 in March, while services PMI came in at 48.9 versus 52.5 a month ago. Now, all three major economies of Europe are experiencing contraction in both manufacturing and services PMI. Now, a month ago, there were some there was some expansion in the PMIs for services, but right now, all of them are in negative, are in contraction. So what could happen in May? The euro and Great Britain pound continue to gain strength against the US dollar. Inflation in Europe could be negated as a result. The EU and China could move closer to a trade deal. Individually, Germany, France, and UK economies are showing much weaker PMIs in April compared to the previous month. So that means that there are firm indication that they will be faced with a lot of challenges. But since the ECB has cut interest rates, the euro area may see temporary boost of economic activities in May. Nevertheless, PMI for manufacturing could remain in contraction, while PMI for services may see some uplift. That is one of the reasons is because the geopolitics in Europe has resulted in rapid deindustrialization of several countries, okay, due to their sanction of using cheap Russian gas for their industry. So right now they have to rely on more expensive, okay, and also unreliable green energy. For those who missed it, actually, just yesterday, France and Portugal and Spain, and another country, I can't recall which country, actually have a major blackout because of over-reliance on green energy. So that is why when you do not have enough energy, you would actually face some industries that cannot operate without constant and dependable supply of energy. So the BOE will likely see a rate cut in May. Until that is announced, the UK PMIs could likely remain in contraction. The Euro Stocks Index is up 4.89% year to date as of 29 April and has benefited from the rollover of the S&P, which is down 5.79% year to date as of 29 April. Should Trump tax proposal ignite a rally in the S&P, then we could see funds leaving the Euro Stocks Index and head towards the US. Both EU and China could inch closer through a trade deal. So let's look at China's economic indicators. GDP grew 5.4% year-on-year in Q1 2024. CPI fell 0.1% year-on-year in March, up from negative 0.7% in February. From January to March, on average, the CPI decreased 0.1% year-on-year, unchanged from that in 2024. Core CPI rose 0.5% year-on-year in March, up from negative 0.1% in February. PPI came in at negative 2.2% year-on-year in February. Sorry, this is March. EPI came in at negative 2.2% year-on-year in March, up from negative 2.3% in February. Retail sales climbed 5.4% year-on-year in Q1 2025, up from 4.6% in 2024. Now, China normally report its retail sales on an average over the first 3 months because of the Spring Festival or Chinese New Year. So sometimes you have, when it falls in January, you may see a lesser economic activity, and it falls in February, then February will see less economic activity. So they lump it up under Q1 to give a more average picture of the entire outcome. Industrial output rose 7.7% year-on-year in Q1, up from 6.1% in 2024. Fixed asset investment rose 4.2% year-on-year in Q1, down 2025, down from 4.5% in 2024. Survey urban unemployment rate on average stood at 5.3% in Q1 2025, up from 5.2% in 2024. So there is China constantly faced with some unemployment challenges, okay, which is always hovering around the 5+%. China's per capita disposable income increased 5.5% year-on-year in nominal terms in Q1 2025. Per capita disposable income in rural areas increased by 6.2%, while urban per capita disposable income rose by 4.9%. So about a year plus ago, we talked about China revitalization of the rural economy. So right now, it is paying back in terms of increase in disposable income. So you can see that if we take into consideration that the CPI is actually negative 0.1%, there is the Chinese citizens actually enjoy better purchasing power, okay, versus the US, where inflation, let's say, is at 2%, but year-on-year growth in average earnings, if I recall correctly, is around 4% plus. So that is less. CPI is only about 2%, okay? But here you can see that if we minus the CPI, they even gain a bit more because of a negative CPI. So that means that the Chinese citizens have better purchasing power. And that is why when the IMF measured countries' economic GDP by purchasing power parity, China actually far exceed the US, okay, by having a purchasing power parity GDP of more than 30 trillion US dollar. So other indicators, China total goods imports and export in renminbi denominated terms expanded 1.3% year-on-year. In Q1 2025, China export during the period rose 6.9% to 6.13 trillion renminbi, while imports fell 6% to 4.17 trillion, resulting in a surplus of 1.43 trillion. Now, a lot of people like to say that because China import is lower, okay, than the previous year, then they say that, the people do not have enough, does not have the spending power. But just now when I showed the disposable income, it has already demolished that kind of notion. So the value of China's international trade in goods and services reached 4.27 trillion in March, up 6% year-on-year. In US dollar terms, the country export of goods and services amounted to 329.9 billion in March, while imports were 265 billion, resulting in a surplus of 64.6 billion. Of the total, export of goods stood at 2.13 trillion, and the import reached 1.52 trillion, resulting in a surplus of 603 billion. The export services reached 239.3 trillion, while import reached 379.1 billion. Sorry, 239.3 billion, and import was 379.1 billion, resulting in a deficit of 139.8 billion. So you can see here is that as China becomes more self-reliant, the surplus from international trade in goods and services is destined to increase, because if China becomes more self-reliant, there is little need, okay, to import import goods or services from overseas. For example, in the case of, let's say, NVIDIA, China need not import expensive chips from the US, but they can readily use their homemade chips. And that will actually lower the import value. And because of that, the surplus can be sustained. So in the real estate market, commercial home prices in March rose in more Chinese cities from a month ago as transactions become more vibrant in the real estate market. An MBS survey covering 70 major cities said that the prices of new houses were higher in 24 cities, up from 18 in February, while resale homes in 10 cities logged price increases, up from 3. So you can see that there is some gradual shoots of green in the Chinese real estate market. Home prices in first-tier cities, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, increased in March compared to February, while second and third-tier cities in general registered narrow price declines. On a year-on-year basis, Chinese cities at large continue to see smaller home price drops in March. So let's look a bit on the electricity consumption. China electricity consumption rose 2.5% year-on-year in Q1 2025, hitting 2.38 trillion kilowatt hour. Power consumed by the country's primary and secondary industry gained 8.7% and 1.9% year-on-year respectively, while those of the tertiary sector rose 5.2% year-on-year. Driven by booming technologies like AI, cloud computing, and 5G, the electricity use in the internet and related services sector recorded 25.7% year-on-year on a daily average basis. Now, this is indirectly telling you where all the economic activities are centered into. And from there, you can roughly deduce what kind of companies would actually benefit. The power use in charging and battery swapping service sector surged 42.3% year-on-year on a daily average basis, reflecting rapid expansion in the new energy vehicle industry. So important takeaways: China is achieving new levels of energy efficiency from smart grid, dark factories to energy efficient equipment. That is why even though the electricity consumption rose 2.5% versus the GDP, which is more than 5%, you can see that normally the electricity consumption moves quite close to the GDP. But because China right now is transitioning to more efficient energy, you see that the consumption of energy is gradually falling back when compared to the overall GDP. So AI, cloud, high-tech manufacturing, and EVs will remain at the forefront of China's new economic development. So one of the key economic policy that came out recently to counter the Trump tariffs from Beijing is to boost consumption of services. And China unveiled a work plan to boost service consumption in 2025, part of the country's effort to unleash new drivers of domestic demand and spur economic growth. The plan aims to expand the supply of consumer services, improve service quality, and unlock the growth potential in the sector. The plan proposes 48 specific measures across a broad spectrum of industries, covering both main service sectors as well as new forms of business and new consumption scenarios. These measures outline focus mainly on 6 areas, including policy support, promotional activities, opening up, and the consumption environment. It calls for increasing supply of quality services by expanding and opening up and reducing restriction on domestic market players. Notably, the plan has also formulated special policy measures for elder care, childcare, housekeeping, and other services concerning people's livelihood. So I think if you are interested, okay, in investing in certain sector, these are the main focus. Especially recently, there's report that some huge companies based in the US, they are quite eager to invest in China's elderly care. Okay, I leave it to you to search for those companies. Okay, and if we look at another point of view, China will create new growth models for growth, such as expanding its services economy and loosen policy to spur investment in major sectors such as financial, manufacturing, and services. Some low-end manufacturing jobs will be at risk, and this could push unemployment higher because this is the other impact of the tariffs. So China will leverage on its influence in the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, and BRICS to offshore jobs, especially construction and engineering jobs. Meanwhile, China will continue to develop new markets, especially in Africa and Latin America. So you can see that overall, the biggest growth actually comes from ASEAN over the 2018 to 25 period, okay, where it increased by 3.9 percentage points. So even though China can, some of the Western nations may see a downtrend, but overall, Latin America, you can see that it is gaining, okay, and Africa as well. In fact, China will be more aggressive in Africa because of the huge opportunity. So what could happen to China in May? China's retail sales will continue to show resilience driven by government's trade-in programs, consumption of services, incentives, and domestic tourism. Economic indicators will stay buoyant. Strong growth is expected from the electronics and EV sectors. China international trade in goods and services will register surpluses. So China is essentially working on decoupling from the US. There won't be any direct communication between leaders, but we could see small little steps being made, such as a gradual removal of some tariffs from both sides. So I believe that if they want to really work towards a deal, this could be one of the indicators. Okay, Trump might want to loosen a bit of the tariffs, and China will reciprocate by removing some tariffs. Okay, but all this will not be announced in a big way. Okay, it is like moving small little steps to see they can move up the ladder in terms of discussion later on. Real estate market is improving, but challenges remain. Expect government to roll out more incentives toward home ownership by encouraging young people to start a family. Could see more government policies geared towards encouraging sector consolidation to achieve high efficiency and lower cost of manufacturing. M&A activities to increase. Now, I believe that the major sector that would see some reorganization or M&A activities could be in the field of high tech. Okay, don't be surprised. There is news leak that it will involve the semiconductor sector, not only the manufacturer, but also the equipment manufacturers, and also potentially the EVs, because China has so many EVs companies, and even though, and also robotic companies, because there's just too many of them. But I believe that the government's policy would eventually make it such that certain companies may not be able to survive because they just do not have that technology. Especially recently, the Chinese government announced that all EVs vehicles must meet a certain battery quality by June 2026, that in the event of whatever accidents, they would not actually explode or burst into flames. Okay, something along that
Possible.
line.
Not possible, believe me.
Okay, I think what they wanted to do is that there must be tremendous safeguard. Okay, and that is why um I will I anticipate there will be more and more solid state battery evolution, because solid state battery would actually reduce the amount of those
The risk will reduce, but
yes,
not exploding is not possible because these are all high energy things means that, high reaction. Okay.
yes,
If you want reaction, then there will be chances of explosion as well. You get what I mean? Like petrol and the fuel that we're
yes,
using in our car is still the same thing.
yes. I think the one of the criteria is that in the event of an accident, it should not expose that battery to the kind of uh it could it could also mean that the casing need to be strengthened, okay, so that the damage is less. Yeah, I do understand, because in order for electric vehicles to move, you need an unstable element so that the electrons can
Yeah,
move.
the lithium is a very reactive
Yes, without the
compound.
flow of
Yeah.
electrons, yeah, then you cannot
Yeah,
have
no
it,
electricity.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So
electricity. It's just a flow of electron. That
yeah,
is all. If you know physics and science.
yeah. So it will be very interesting what the companies will come up with. I think the other thing is that they also have come up with certain regulations here that the batteries must meet certain recycling kind of
Mm,
um
yeah.
requirements. Okay. So I think all these are being put into so that it forced people to consolidate. But anyway, I have not read that report in detail, but from a glance, I was quite surprised also when it says that, prevent it from catching fire, and or even for to prevent explosion.
Mm.
So, well, let's see what the battery companies can come up with.
Yeah, okay, we shall
Yeah,
see that because actually even strong casing will not help because the thermal runaway builds up the
yeah,
pressure inside and then it will eventually explode. It will be even worse. If you have stronger casing, the impact will be much, much worse because I'm in battery technology. I sort of, I'm with those lithium battery suppliers for many, many years, auditing their lines and everything. So I know battery technology very well.
yeah. Let's see what they manage to come up with. But I think it will test the kind of creativity of the two major players, namely
Mm.
BYD and CATL. For those who are unaware, CATL would soon be listed in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Yeah. So China will continue to disrupt the high-tech sector with new versions of AI and introduction of new semiconductor manufacturing equipment and processors, including some quantum computing related news. So China is well on its way to, I think, to overcome the EUV. They use a different type of light source that is different from ASML. So it will be interesting to see how that deviation would actually works, because news came out that it will be more energy efficient. Okay. And China's quantum computing, I think, would actually gather pace, because recently there's a report that says that quantum computing is gradually being used in the medical science for fast diagnosis or fast analysis of labs, lab testing and such. Yeah, so it will be very interesting. So in terms of geopolitics, now this is where I think the world is once again face a lot of war getting out of control. So according to the Saudi-based Gulf Research Center and several Arab media outlets, the Yemeni Presidential Leadership Council, or PLC, the internationally recognized government of Yemen, supported by the US, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf nations, is massing upwards of 80,000 troops for a major offensive to retake Houthi-controlled port of Hodeidah on the western coast of Yemen. So Yemen actually have two governments, one that is supported by pro-US and the other one are the Houthis. So there is an outside chance that Iran could be targeted as well, especially after Trump warned something bad could happen to Iran if the US and Iran cannot reach a deal. So these are very alarming signals. Okay, and if let's say war break out in the Middle East involving Iran, then I can't imagine the kind of impact on the global economy, because Iran has promised that any attack by US or Israel, it holds the option to block the Strait of Hormuz, where about 20 to 25% of oil passes through the narrow straits. So on the other side, okay, India and Pakistan are on the brink of an all-out war after a major terrorist in Kashmir. And Japan, a strong US ally, has spoken out against Trump tariffs. Japan also stressed that it has no intention to form an economic bloc against China. Japan's largest trading partner is China for more than a decade. So these are the kind of countries that are becoming more vocal against Trump's tariffs. So back to you, Evelyn.
Yeah, okay. Let me just share my screen again. Okay, so oh, for a while. The one. So I think let's look at, yeah, you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So yeah, just now I talk about the course delivery on the 4-day course. This is the schedule actually. 8th of May, module 1 and module 2, and then Casey will come over to give a talk online on the financial planning for retirees, okay? And Dr. Yao will talk about mental health and well-being of retirees. And then in 11 May will be passion to profit wealth generating activities in your golden years, where it will align with the birth chart. That means you will look at certain elements of birth chart to look at, what is suitable for you in the golden years, and then unlocking the growth capacity in period 9 about investment by PC. PC, your session is on 11th of May, and then module 6 and 7 on scams, especially there are more ways and measures that to protect ourselves from scams. Recently, I posted, an AI prompt that will help you to filter out potential, investment, what it is all about. I think I posted in my Telegram channel, and also manifesting for abundance and prosperity. So this is the schedule that I have lined up for all the participants for the 4 days free course. Okay, so yeah, if you like what we are presenting tonight, do consider join us if you are not a member yet of Astrology and Global Trends membership. So the comprehensive, the membership will be until the December forecast. We will reset everything in the new year in 2026. Okay, so the comprehensive members will consist of early access to this recording. That means a full recording. We will not edit anything. The one in my YouTube channel is already edited. Then and also the presentation slides that we presented today, and then the 2025, the annual astrology and global trends talk for the year, and also the exclusive Telegram group for special discussion. And then our book for 2025 forecast, we talk about monthly investors manifestation and also special discounts our courses. Okay, if there's courses. So premium membership will receive even a weekly report, and if those that are in Chinese metaphysics, you will know that what is the Qimeng direction weekly, and it's very tedious to come up with these 3 weekly pairs timing. Okay, so and direction, and you will receive that, and the daily Qimeng daily direction, because this is what I've used for myself. So I'm sharing it out as well to the premium membership, and also a welcome free gift for all the members of list of high dividend yield stocks. Okay, so this is what you get for till now. So it's approximately about 8 months from now, and it's actually less than $10 per month that you will get all this value. Okay, and it will give you a direction on your investment. This is the forecast book that you will get included in the package. This is what our our member has said about us. Okay, it's worth every cent for the information that we are doing. Okay, and this is also our track record. When we started this platform in 2022, we already talked about goal, and I think some of our members have already taken action. Okay, so I think they are quite happy with what our study is. We do not recommend, but we just study potentially. Even in our book launch, we talk about it. A lot of people also ask, what is the best investment? And this is, what we have spotted, we share. We also share HK Asia Limited. If you go and check the price, from 30 cents, it shot up to now about 4 or 5 Hong Kong dollars. Okay, this is something by accident. It's not that every stock that we have this type of track record. This is a disclaimer. It's just that only at this particular one that we don't expect it to move so fast. Okay,
Yes.
so
Yeah. Originally supposed to be a dividend-based stock. Okay, but then the company suddenly was bought over by a group who wants to invest in cryptocurrency.
Yeah. Okay. So we also do not want to discriminate. Oh, we are so good that we can spot all these things. We do not want to attract wrong kind of people into our group also. Okay, it's not a get rich quick scheme. Okay, and then the Xiaomi. Okay, I think we start to talk about Xiaomi last year, right?
No,
yeah.
2023, if I'm not wrong. Late
2023.
2022 or 2023.
Okay. Yeah. Because yeah. Okay, so this is what the price is today as well. And then this one we talk about Bitcoin as well. So ever since I think the pandemic, even in my YouTube channel, I already asked people to invest in Bitcoin. If they have listened to my YouTube channel, that advice is free advice. Okay, it's just that I'm helping you to this one to boost up your investment. So this is the what the Bitcoin is. Okay, but now I do not advise so much on Bitcoin anymore. Our members will know why. Okay, so and I will also disclose more in our period 9 course. Period 9 course this coming June as well. Okay, so this is the weekly report, what it looks like, on the insights, the market insights. Okay, that what you will get. And this is the Qimeng, the daily direction. If you do not like, some members told me they do not need this, but it's okay. It's already in the weekly report. And this is the summary that we have. And I think if anyone is interested who is not yet a member, PC, you can drop the link, the form to join. Okay, and then okay, so this is a summary. We'll talk a lot tonight, so we will summarize up what we have talked about on the May forecast. So potential fire-related incidents or long vehicle on fire, okay? And then ongoing conflicts of social unrest, rising nationalism, and also political instability, trade war intensified, and also a check on the precious metal price, as just now I've talked about. So over to you. I'm busy to do the summary.
Yeah, I think more countries are collectively fighting against Trump tariffs, and how the tension in the Middle East evolve will depend on the US-Iran deal. A major Middle East event could send commodities soaring, and all eyes will be on Trump's income tax policy, which will dictate the direction of the market.
Yeah, it seems that we are aligned in both the astrology and also the global trends research that is happening as well. Okay, so more or less, I think we are over 90% alignment when we come to that. Okay, yeah, it has been tested, tried over so many years. How many years? It's almost, we are already almost in our 36th episode already.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Our 3rd year anniversary. Okay, so yeah, we will go through Q&A now. Okay, let me just go through. Let me just stop sharing, and then if anyone has any question, they are welcome to type it in the chat box, and we shall answer to our best knowledge possible. Okay, so let's go through the Q&A. I think Augustine has a question here. To PC, do you check the latest GDP data? What do you think? And is it really the start of slowdown?
Okay, I think the GDP data is widely expected to be negative, mainly because a lot of companies were front running the tariffs, so the import was very much larger, resulting in much larger trade deficit. Of course, when you measure the GDP, the trade deficit actually plays a role. And on top of that, there was a reduction in government spending. Uh, Basically, spending is reduced because the government doesn't have much money left. Okay, so as I mentioned, this quarter they are going to issue more bonds, okay, to raise money, equivalent to more than 512 billion US dollars. So, but actually, whatever that we see in the GDP, you need to understand that a recession is likely to be the best outcome. Okay, and if let's say it moves to a stagflation, then the US would be in much deeper trouble. So the next one to look at will be in the second quarter. If let's say there is another negative, then that will be a technical recession. So a lot of fundamentals are pointing towards a policy disaster by the Trump admin and an economy that will be severely damaged as a result. Okay, so hope that answers your questions. So Steve Fu has a
Yeah,
question
okay.
that
So,
based on the yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on the many headwinds US faces, does it imply China market potentially
Based
can
on
have more?
many headwinds.
Yeah. Evelyn?
Oh, yeah.
So Steve was asking,
Based on, okay, this one, yes. Okay, can you help to answer this question, PC?
okay, now I think overall the Chinese market has been underperforming the US market for a long time. Um, I think the US market is going to face a lot of challenges. And for those who actually read our period 9 book, Unlock Your Wealth Potential, we already put in the kind of forecast on why China will actually continue to excel. Now you can actually measure by the amount of technology that China is unveiling every month. Now with this kind of technology, it goes to show that China's is actually changing, okay, from a very centralized, not changing from a economy that heavily dependent on real estate more than a decade ago. Okay, right now it's moving towards high-tech manufacturing. And as long as you are the major producer of the entire global market, you can always stay ahead because you are the one that are making the goods. Now, US is basically a financialized economy, okay? Prices paid for medical in US are very astronomous in terms of pricing, whereas in China it's much lower. So that astronomous fee that patients paid for the US medical treatment and such moves into the economy and therefore inflate the GDP. That is why people say it's financialized. And China already moved away from a real estate, which is another type of financialized economy because it's based on speculation of the property price. But as long as China stays ahead in terms of manufacturing, introducing new materials, as I've shown just now, they are already doing 2D chips and so forth, then it will be in better position to face the challenges. So yes, I believe that China would be heading towards a better economy position versus the US if we were to compare the two over the next few years. And I think once the US debt becomes a great challenge, eating into the government's revenue substantially. Right now, it is like government's revenue is 4.5 trillion in terms of taxes, but then the interest paid on its debt is already 1.2 trillion. So if it moves closer over the next 2 years to about, let's say 2 trillion, almost 20 or 30% of the, not 20, if it moves towards 30 to 50% of the total revenue, then the US could be in deep trouble. And that is why we often say, in order to protect your wealth, we do not know which direction the economy will be worse off. But then as long as you hold gold, it will actually protect your wealth. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and then from astrology standpoint, we also predicted that in our Unlock Your Book Potential, that which country will be stronger in the next 20 years. Okay, China seems to have an advantage, and I also explained that in the in the book itself. So you can further read the book. And then next one is from Audrey. Audrey is our member. So yeah, saying about market rally, yeah, actually we have already talked about that as well. In fact, earlier on a few months ago, we already asked members to start to take profit, okay, at that time. Yeah, so if the market rallies, I think it's advisable. This is not really a financial advice, but based on our research that you can potentially go and research that whether this will is a good time. And in fact, we have already talked about that a few months ago, that to take profit, especially when you are in US market. Okay, go back, invest and market in July, August. Okay, this one I will hold my reservations. I will answer more in the members areas. Okay, And actually, but I can tell you that the next half of the year will see, the supply chain shortage will be even more obvious, right? Especially, I think, in the autumn months. In the autumn months. Okay.
Now, also, I would like to add, normally major sell-off in the US market occurs during during the autumn months. Okay, so that's the period you should be aware of. I think sometimes it's like you just have to wait for opportunity. Yeah, sometimes our hand does get itchy when we hold on to certain money,
Yeah.
then certain amount of cash, then but then sometimes I think patience actually
Yeah.
have its own good point. Okay, for
Mm.
example, Warren Buffett has been holding about $300 billion in cash ever since last year, and he's still not making big moves. Okay, so this is something that while bidding the time, you can always park it, short-term FD. I think short-term FD it will still earn you something. Otherwise, you look at some high dividend yielding stock that pays around 9 to uh, even 9 or 10%. There are still those that are available in the Hong Kong market.
Mm. Okay, next is, yeah. Is it good from GC? Is it good to continue invest in US tech stocks? Or is it due to move over to China tech, EV, and robotics? Actually, this one we have already talked about it also quite some time. In fact, from last year, if you follow our work, we are one of the first to talk about China market. Okay, if you look at our book in Unlock Your Wealth Potential, we also talk about that. It's no harm that you have a mix of this. I cannot tell you that you have to exit all the US stocks and then move over to China, but it's good that you have a balance. Okay, you go and research on your own that the balance that you look at. We have already talked about that quite some time ago, that potentially from the data that we have, that China is going to be quite prosperous in technology.
Yeah, I think that there will be do not put your basket do not put your fruits in all
Or
in one
eggs, yeah,
basket.
yeah.
Yeah. You should have a few baskets, okay? But I think that if you are looking at the Max 7, yeah, I think you have to do a bit more due diligence. Now, one of the key things that I do use in measuring whether a company is undervalued or not, I would use the PEG ratio, so that even though the PE would look very overvalued, let's say 100 over, or even up to 200 PE ratio. But if, let's say, the company exhibit earnings growth of, let's say, 100 over percent or 200%, then your PEG ratio should come down substantially. So if the PEG ratio is less than 1, then I think it does make sense to weigh, okay, against revenue growth, earnings growth, and other kind of valuation method. Okay, but PEG ratio would definitely show you whether it's undervalued or not. Normally, I set it as not more than 1. Okay, so you can do your own measurement from there.
Yeah, okay. So I think I need to go now. If there's no more questions, we can call it a night. Thank you, everyone, and have a good celebration in the Labor Day. So enjoy yourself for the day off.
Yeah. Thank you all for logging in, and hope you have a pleasant holiday and weekend ahead. Bye bye.
Okay, bye-bye.